Teachers, parents, and administrators in Michigan bracing for major changes as the White House calls for a shutdown of the Department of Education. What will it mean for specialized programs for kids in Metro Detroit? Also, the lieutenant governor wants to keep his office in Lansing. Garlin Gilchrist announcing his run for governor this week. His thoughts on what it would mean to be the state's first black governor and why his current boss hasn't endorsed him yet. Today's Sunday, March 16th, 2025, and this is Flashpoint.
Happy Sunday, everybody. I'm Jason Colthorpe. Somebody somewhere once said it's always election season. Seems fitting considering we now have 6 people officially running for governor here in Michigan, and you won't cast a vote for any of them for another 17 months. Some wondered if Lieutenant Governor Garlin Gilchrist might run for mayor of Detroit, actually, having grown up on the east side. But this week he announced he's more interested in the state's top job. I sat down with him to talk about the issues facing the state, including some that have gotten worse during his time at the helm with Gretchen Whitmer, like education. Speaking of, talk of shutting down the Department of Education ramped up again this week. And while it would take a supermajority, 60 votes in the Senate to do it, layoffs have already begun. What does that mean for our children? We've gathered some experts to discuss it right now on Flashpoint. Joining me to talk about it this morning, Jack Elsey, a longtime teacher who is with the Michigan Educator Workforce Initiative, Dr. Alina Zachary-Ross, superintendent of Ypsilanti Community Schools, Tracy Walker-Jackson, a special education professional, and Rachel Felice from Moment Strategies and has worked with several school districts across the state. Now, let me break it down as we sit here taping this on Friday morning. Here's where things kind of stand. 6 regional offices of the Department of Education have been closed. 50% of the staff in the Office of Civil Rights has been laid off. 300 positions in the Federal Student Aid Office, which handles loans and grants. And if anybody here had loans or student aid going to college, you know, they don't move swiftly as it is. And on top of all of that, we got this statement from the Michigan Department of Education. And in part, it reads, abolishing the U.S. Department of Education, as unlikely as it is, wouldn't mean that federal funding for Michigan students and staff and MDE staff would have to end. The federal government could still provide that funding through another federal department, but the early federal cuts in education research and efforts to pause education grants and loans, among others, make it all but certain that more cuts will be attempted. Again, that's from the state superintendent. So I guess let me start here. Jack, I'll start. When you hear that, is it that simple as if they cut this, okay, the funding just gets rerouted and everything's okay?
It's never that simple.
Yeah.
I would say almost no educator I know would say status quo, the way education is governed in our country, is working really, really well. But almost no educator I know would say the way that they're making these cuts is the way it should be done, right? And so right now, Michigan has $1.1 billion in federal funding that is designed to directly support students most in need in our state. And right now, almost no one in the state understands what the plan is, and that's problematic for kids and families.
Tracy, let me bring you in here. When we talk about the students that this might affect, and we talk about the most vulnerable, lower income students, what would this do?
It's catastrophic. I mean, when I honestly think about it, it makes I've always taught, I did 13 years in the classroom, and I've always taught in lower income neighborhoods, generally in the special education setting. And when I think about how things look with the Department of Education in tow, right? There are so many other things, and there's so much gray area when you think of appropriate education, whether we're talking about city to city and class to class, right? Economic class to class. This widens that gap of gray area. So the things that we didn't have necessarily,
a lot of programs.
The programming that we didn't have, the after-school programs, these enrichment programs that inspire the kids and give them exposure outside of their neighborhood, right? That gives them the opportunity to think about college.
Yeah.
That starts the conversation. We're essentially kind of eliminating all of that.
It feels like the beginning and the end. I know my two youngest were speech delayed, and those programs are paid for by their public school.
Absolutely.
Alina, what would it do to your district?
Oh my goodness, it would devastate the district. We receive in federal funds about $6.8 million. And so those funds, as you just spoke about, really serve the most needy in my district. So we're thinking about, when you talk about college, we start early on with Head Start. Head Start funding is involved in that. Our IDEA, our special education funding. We have right now a magnet grant, which is substantial, $5 million a year, giving our students who are typically don't have access to IB classes and to STEAM. Those are the programs that are at risk as we're thinking about what's happening in the federal government.
And Rachel, you've worked with several districts. When they say things like, we want to put education back in the hands of the states, of the local school district, I think a lot of people might think, oh, okay, well, they can run the curriculums. They already do that, correct?
Yeah, no, that's right. The states already and local school boards have control. So that logic for wanting to dismantle the Department of Education is a little bit concerning and a little bit questionable. And when I think about my own journey, I'm a proud public school product of Michigan, specifically of Southeast Michigan. I was on the free reduced school lunch list, and I went to college because of FAFSA. Without that, I would not have had the opportunity to do that. I wouldn't be sitting here today. So when I think about that, other children across Michigan might not have that opportunity, it really breaks my heart.
Yeah, Pell Grants were a common phrase in my household as well. And this one's kind of for anybody, but does anybody have an idea what this would also mean? Like, if we're eliminating lots of programs or grants and things, how many jobs are we possibly losing here?
Well, when I think about it, it's also how we have our pipeline to teachers. So we think about, recently in Michigan, we've been thinking a lot about grow your own programs. The grow your own programs are, the funds come to our intermediate school district. I know Washington Intermediate School District gets $4.9 million that is there to grow our educators. So we already have a critical shortage of educators across Michigan. And we're doing a great job growing, developing our own, ensuring that they are prepared, know the curriculum. But what happens if that funding goes away?
Yeah.
And I also think about, from the other perspective, and the perspective of the teacher, what additional responsibilities are going to be added to the plate, because there already is such a shortage. But I mean, all of the duties that they have to go somewhere, and if these jobs aren't available, the tasks don't go away. So who is essentially going to be responsible for that and fulfilling that in the interim?
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, education directly relates to our growth in the economy and our ability to attract business. And so a highly skilled workforce is more productive, it's more innovative, it's more economically competitive. And those are things that companies are looking for when they're trying to find a place to invest in, to create jobs and opportunities. So when we make it more difficult for our students to get a college degree or to earn a credential, what we're really doing is we're weakening our workforce, because now we have these businesses that are here that can't fill the talent gaps that they have.
Because number one, what's the first thing a family looks for when they're moving somewhere? How's the school system?
Right.
Jack, when you look at it and you try and find the bright spot, is there any kind of bonus or a plus side to eliminating the federal department? Does it, or I guess the other question is, how much more of a burden does it put on the state Department of Education?
It puts an enormous burden on the state, and I think smart people can debate about how much ownership the state should have versus how much ownership the federal government should have. The reality is, when there seems to not be a plan, when it seems to be happening very quickly, you don't position states well to receive whatever new responsibility might be coming their way, and think about all the implications, all the people, all the students who might be affected by those decisions that roll downhill.
Not to mention, I didn't even bring it up, but Michigan's been lagging in education. I mean, the nation's report card wasn't very kind. It has Michigan below the middle of the pack, and you think this only gives teachers in districts like yours something else to worry about.
Absolutely. And again, the fact that the funding supports those that are most need. I have the largest number of homeless population in my county. I have the largest number of newcomers coming in. And so the funds, especially where Title I funds, almost $2 million again that impact my district, I can use those funds to support students, to fill in those gaps, to accelerate learning so that we have students who perhaps have come from a home with low poverty, but they still have opportunity, access, and support so that they can excel and be a part of this workforce here in Michigan.
Jason, we've heard too, for one of the reasons why some of these cuts are being made at the federal level is because test scores are too low. But one of the offices that was cut federally was the office that processes the test scores. And so our ability to look out at both nationally and in our state and say which kids are doing best, which kids need more support, and identify those supports that they need is in jeopardy.
That's the research I would believe we're talking about. When I first heard this, I thought, well, what are they researching? They're researching who's lagging behind and who needs the help, correct?
Yeah.
That's correct. And for kids with special needs in special education, the Office of Civil Rights is how often families can get the advocacy that they need to get the services that their kids need and deserve every day. And that function was also cut. And so states are not, at least currently, prepared to handle those functions as they existed at the federal level.
And I should point out, it is unlikely because Congress has to get 60 votes in the Senate to actually eliminate the department. But like we did mention, it can still gut and lay tons of people off. And a judge, also want to point out, a judge has chimed in now. And some of those people that I mentioned at the top of this could be hired back. But I guess, Rachel, where do we go from here if it still does this? Do you foresee being able to turn it around years down the road?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of uncertainty right now, and that is the key word that we are seeing over and over again in President Trump's first few months in office is uncertainty. Coming into federal offices, wiping out staff, really important folks who will make our country and our state run. So I think it's really hard to say where we're going to go from here, and I know we're all just watching very closely to see what comes next.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly a discussion we can have, and we're going to have to watch it in real time play out. But I appreciate everybody's thoughts this morning. Thank you so much for coming in and talking about it, because I know when we're talking about our kids and the programs they need, obviously everyone perks up and is 100% involved. Thank you so much. We're coming right back with a conversation with the Lieutenant Governor who wants a new job. For months, we've been speculating about who might run for what, and this week we did get some answers. Pete Buttigieg decided against throwing his hat in the ring for either Senate or governor, but Lieutenant Governor Garlin Gilchrist announced he does want Michigan's top job, and I had a chance to sit down with him earlier this week.
First of all, congratulations. How long have you been thinking about running for governor?
You know, I've been really excited to come to this conclusion, and it's been based on the conversations I've had in all 83 counties in Michigan. I've been to all of them 3 times. But, you know, what's come to mind over the last couple of years is that people want results. People want people who can get things done, and that's what I am. I'm an engineer, a problem solver, a solution builder who listens to people, who identifies problems with them and then works with them to get a solution. And if one doesn't exist, we create one together. And so for a couple of years now, I've been considering it, and now's the time to step up and stand tall for Michigan.
Speaking of solutions, since you brought that up, education numbers over the last 6 years since your administration's been in office haven't been going the way you would want. The National Test of America, or the nation's report card, numbers still going the wrong way for math and reading. If you become governor, how do you turn that around?
Well, first and foremost, this is a real and urgent problem in Michigan. And I think about my own family. I have twin 6th graders and a kindergartner in Detroit Public Schools Community District right now. So this isn't a theoretical exercise about what do we do in sort of fake life. This is real life, what happens in my household and my family. I'm doing homework with them every day. And so what we have to do, first of all, is build on the progress we've made. We have dealt with the funding gap that existed between districts where people are fighting poverty like Detroit and districts where people, have more wealth. That's important. But now we have to better support our education professionals so they can do the things that work more easily And that if something isn't working, they can switch it. Things like how we teach reading. We just signed legislation last year, for example, that's now going to get us back to the basics of like teaching phonics, the way that you learn to read, the way that I learn to read. We've gotten away from that in Michigan. So we can support those professionals to be able to do the things that they know work. They know how to help kids get better. And so I really have confidence in them to be able to do it.
The obvious follow-up would be, and I know you're lieutenant governor, not governor, but why hasn't that happened in the last 6 years?
Well, we've been making progress. We thought that funding structural difference is really important. Michigan had underfunded special education for 2 generations, and now we are finally fully funding special education programs in the state of Michigan. So we had to really build a foundation. But my administration is going to be about now using that foundation as a starting point to a bigger future and about getting the achievement that we desperately need and that families like mine need with kids in public schools.
Historically, or at least modern history, the last 3 lieutenant governors to make a run for governor have all lost. 2 of them didn't even make it out of the primary. How do you hope to not make the same mistakes?
You know, I'm a different kind of leader. You know, again, I have relationships in all 83 counties in Michigan that I've built over these last 6 years. And I'm the only candidate in this race who's delivered value for people all over Michigan, whether it's from a new wastewater treatment plant to helping free breakfast and lunch to every kid in schools, to building, creating jobs in all these places. And so my record, my relationships, the results I've gotten on the issues that matter, housing, healthcare, economic growth, like these are the things that I have that my predecessors didn't have at the same level.
The only polling I've seen so far comes from Mears News. It has you trailing Jocelyn Benson by about 40 points at this point. Your reaction to that, and how can you make up that kind of deficit?
This is about people. This campaign is starting today, and you're going to even see just at my event later on the kind of grassroots energy that we have for this campaign. And it's going to show that we are excited and people are excited about a real person who's delivered results across the board. We're just getting started, and we're going to have a lot of fun building and growing this movement that everyone in Michigan can see themselves as a part of all across Michigan.
I don't know what your relationships are with the other Democrats other than like Jocelyn Benson, but do you anticipate a nasty primary? And if it does turn a little mudslingy, well, how do you react to that?
Well, look, I'm the only candidate in this race with a record of delivering on things like housing. The only candidate who has helped to spearhead hundreds of millions of dollars invested in affordable housing across Michigan. 60,000 new housing units have come online. I'm the only candidate in this race that has helped drive economic growth and diversifying our economy. I'm a technology entrepreneur, but now we have more technology businesses that can be founded here and that can grow here through the Michigan Innovation Fund. That contrast is really clear, and I think we're going to tell the story about what I've done for Michigan, about how I can help the people of Michigan, be their best selves here. And so I'm sure other candidates will have stories to tell, but I think mine is the most compelling.
If you do become governor, you'd be Michigan's first Black governor. What would that mean to you, but also for the state of Michigan?
I think it's important that when people look at their leadership, that they see themselves reflected, but that they see possibility. Like, I'm a kid from the east side of Detroit. I became an engineer because my community believed that it was possible. And so I think if people see diversity in leadership, if they see a Black governor, that Michigan be the first state that's not on the East Coast to have a Black governor, people will think that anything is possible. And that's frankly the kind of same possibility that my family saw when they came up from the Deep South to Michigan. It's the same possibility that families from Finland saw when they moved to Western Michigan and Northern Michigan. And so I think Michigan's always been a place of dreams and possibility and making things happen that people have never seen before. And so I think that could represent that.
Being a kid who grew up on the east side, as you say, I would assume you have an idea as governor the role Detroit should play for the state. What do you envision?
Look, Detroit's the beating heart of the state. It always has been. It's the biggest city with the most people. And it makes sure to drive a lot of our economic growth, a lot of our creativity. And it has to have an amazing relationship with the rest of Michigan. I think for too long, though, you had Detroit didn't have a relationship with Grand Rapids, didn't have a relationship with Traverse City or Marquette. And it's why I've spent so much time on the road getting to know Michiganders from all walks of life. But as a kid, I'd never been to many of those places. But as lieutenant governor, I've been able to serve them. And so I think the connection between Detroit and the rest of Michigan has to be stronger. And it's going to take someone who has the ability to make that connection. And that's the kind of legacy that I built.
As you get going on this campaign, have you gotten any advice from Governor Whitmer? And do you expect her to be out there campaigning for you?
Governor Whitmer has been very supportive of me making this decision, and it's very encouraging. And what her advice was to make sure you're just getting out there and being with people. The people of Michigan know what they want, what they need, and what they aspire to. And so spending time all over the state of Michigan, I've heard that same thing. I've heard that they have challenges related to healthcare access and specifically, mental health. Like, I have school-age kids. I see what they deal with every single day. And I know that parents are worried about their kids' mental health supports. And so I've put in place systems to be able to help kids navigate their mental health services, certified community behavioral health clinics, school-based health centers, and other things. I talk to people about the anxiety that they have, about the economy as it changes with technology. What's it going to mean for the auto industry and our union workers? I've worked with them to build solutions so they can find their place in the new economy. Like that's something I'm excited about, and she's encouraged me to do that.
Do you expect her to endorse you?
I think the governor has made it clear that she's going to be not participating in the race at this point, and so we'll see how that goes.
Is it disappointing though that your boss is kind of sitting it out for the moment? Or
no, I think it's an opportunity for me to talk about who I am and the work that I've done and the relationships that I want to continue to build in the state of Michigan, and I'm excited to have that conversation.
My thanks to the Lieutenant Governor for that. We'll be right back, and we'll wrap it up with 4 things. All right, 4 things to finish up this edition. If you're heading out of town for a spring break vacation, 4 reminders to make sure you have fun, you stay safe, and you don't break the bank. First, if you are a spur-of-the-moment traveler like I am and you're looking for last-minute deals, try bundling your flight and hotel. Experts say this will save you a few bucks. And a helpful hint, Thursday flights are 17% cheaper on average. Second, let's talk safety. Turn on your share your location feature on your phone. Make sure your friends and your family know how to use it and find you in case you get lost or you get sick or you get in some trouble. This goes hand in hand with the buddy system. Try and stay together, especially if alcohol is involved. Third, set a daily spending budget and stick to it. No unnecessary purchases. The last thing you want to do on vacation is put yourself in a bad mood because you gave in and you bought your daughter the $70 Anna Maria Island sweatshirt she's only going to wear once and then leave it behind when she goes to college. I might have some personal experience with that one. And fourth, one more thing to try and save some money. Talk to the locals wherever you're at, especially when you're going out to eat. Don't wander into the super expensive touristy place without asking the peeps who live there where the best place to eat is. They'll probably point you to the place that's in your budget and likely much more memorable, like Skinny's Place, also on AMI. You're welcome. What do you think about that? Drop me an email on this or anything else we discussed on the show today. Meet the Press is coming up next. I'm Jason Colthorpe. We'll see you later.